So welcome back, everybody. I'm not talking about science on this video, although that will be the next video I load. Um, Part of the reason for this channel is I wanted to get people to find ways to exercise their brain that they might enjoy. And one of the things I've noticed about every professional scientist who's any good at all is that they always have a creative outlet outside of work. So they always have, they're either into art or music or play instruments, or they read a lot of books, especially fiction books, because it does help exercise your brain in ways that nonfiction books do not. So I've been going through the old Tom Clancy books in sort of an effort to figure out a couple things. One is, was the guy actually getting information from one of the intelligence agencies or not? And the other was because they're just good books. So I've made it up to this one. This is my first edition copy of Without Remorse. It's a great book. We'll get to that in a second. Where does it fit in the timeline? It's the seventh in publication order. It's the sixth in the Jack Ryan universe. And chronologically, it kind of comes first. It comes before all the other ones. This is sort of the backstory of Mr. Clark, if you will, whose real name is John Kelly. Now, the thing about this book that sets it aside from the others is we really find out a lot more about Clark, who's sort of this mysterious guy that works for the agency, and what kind of made him into what he is. And I don't think the Without Remorse movie or any of the Jack Ryan movies or the series for that matter did justice to Clark. And I can't discount the movie at all. It was a good movie. But this book that gives his backstory is 600 pages long, 600, a little over 600 pages long. And if you look at, sort of script to screen, what's it look like? One page of script is roughly 1 minute on screen. So this would be a 10-hour or so movie if it was a direct translation. Not very good for the movies, right? Maybe good for a streaming series. And I think out of any character that Tom Clancy was involved in, John Clark is the one that we've kind of missed in a video setting. But anyway, so what makes John Clark become what makes John Kelly become Clark? Well, we found out he was a Navy something, right? So he was obviously a SEAL, but he won't admit that. Although the book it does come out in the book that he was a SEAL. He's out of the Navy, working when his life sort of took a switch. So he was in Vietnam. He's a Vietnam veteran. The book is set during the time period when Vietnam was still an active war, in the 70s. And so he's out, he's working, he's doing things that an underwater demolitions expert does because, that's where the SEALs came out of, was the UDT program. And his wife is killed in an auto accident. His pregnant wife is killed in an auto accident. Of course, that sends John Kelly into a mental state that would do anything, would send any of us to be numb, right? So he's sort of numb, just kind of going through life, and all of a sudden on a lark, he picks up a hitchhiker. Hitchhiker turns out to be a very beautiful woman with a checkered past. She's into drugs. She was a prostitute. He helps her get cleaned up. And then she is killed. Well, that of course sends him into a downward mental spiral again. But what happens when you piss off a Navy SEAL and they decide to make it personally, because they almost killed him in the process of killing her, and they actually didn't just kill her, they tortured her. So he goes on a war against the drug dealers. And if you really want to take out a group of drug dealers, have a Navy SEAL make it personal, right? I think that's an interesting concept to play with in a book. And by the way, this book, as far as action books goes, as far as, sort of thriller kind of military, techno-military action thrillers go, this one I think is the best one that exists. I've read a lot of this kind of genre, and action thriller writers. If you have not read this book, I suggest you read it. However, you might look at it and go, "Why do I bother?" Because the perfect book exists. This thing is that good. It's the kind of thing that can make other writers look at it and go, "You know what? I'm not going to bother anymore because it's too good." Um, but anyway, so John uh, Kelly is sent into the spiral, and he goes to war kind of with the drug dealers, and it's not going their way. But all of a sudden, the CIA picks him up in as a consultant to go help rescue some POWs. So he's in between these two worlds where he's working for the agency, he's working for himself. The agency brings him, in full time towards the end of the book. I don't want to give too much of it away because honestly, if you have not read it, and I'm not sure this is one of Tom Clancy's more widely read books, I really wish you would pick up a copy of this and get started. Get it on Audible, get it on Kindle, get it however you have to get it. But this is the book you want to read. Um, It is in the Jack Ryan universe. Jack Ryan is still by age, if you look at it chronologically, he would be a college student, and as a very cute thing, Tom Clancy, I think, yeah, exercised his cute button. One of the police investigating Kelly, Clark's rampage against the drug dealer turns out to be Jack Ryan's dad. Small world, right? So the interesting thing towards the end of it is that, it really does kind of get into the whole police procedure and how would the agency cover something up, and what happens when we have internal leaks and when you have bad cops. All of that is in the book, and how do you uncover those things using your spycraft or police work. And Clark plays a very central role in all that. And at the end of it, you know that Clark is going to go to work for Jim Greer over at CIA. And Jim Greer, by the way, if you ever have a boss who was the ultimate CYA guy, Jim Greer is that guy, right? He's just the one you want. And that book, it kind of drives that home. Now, how does this fit into the was Tom Clancy getting info from one of the agencies? It doesn't. Okay, it really doesn't tell you anything new that you didn't know. So like Hunt for Red October, you're like, how did he figure this out? Some of All Fears, you're like, how did he figure some of this stuff out? Some of the others had things that were so politically just perfectly timed. And if you watch the videos on the playlist, you'll see my thoughts on those. That makes you wonder, was he getting information from somewhere? This one's not like that. This one is a much different book, but I think it is possibly the best Tom Clancy book written. That it was the best book that Tom Clancy wrote, and I think in the military thriller space, it is one of the best I have ever seen, if not the best. I'm happy to have a counterpoint to that if anybody disagrees with me, but if you had to ask me the best book in the military thriller space, I think that might possibly be it. It's at least in anybody's short list for top five, if you're being serious about it. So I think it's just a great book. I don't think it helps us answer the question, was Tom Clancy, in with one of the agencies or not? Because but by the time this was written, which is 1993, it's set in the latter part of Vietnam. All that stuff was pretty well known, and the drug problem all over the country with it coming in from Asia, that was pretty well known. So, a lot of the stuff in the book, it would have been easy to find out with anybody who had a library card and read newspapers and magazines, right? So, not difficult to find any of it. I don't think this helps answer that question. However, one of the best books I've ever read in the category. So I hope everybody appreciates that. Pick up a copy of it if you haven't read it. The science videos will come back, but I want to reiterate that this sort of stuff, everybody I've ever met who works in the scientific or technical fields, who is sort of that upper echelon of creative folks who are always the ones everybody wants on projects, do have things they do outside of work that are they're not just sort of, oh, I'm going to sit down and vegetate in front of TV. It's much more sort of exercise your brain stuff. Everybody's got hobbies outside of work. Reading books and playing music is mine. Other people are, going to artwork, other things. But, if the science videos will be back next, we're going to go back to the Nobel Prize stuff. And I am preparing a video on quantum loop gravity. It is a much longer one than I normally do, and it's taking a lot of editing and a bunch of special graphics to get it right. But that one's coming up. So if you haven't yet, click like, subscribe, all that fun stuff on the channel, and we'll see you on the next video.